He kōna I purangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
They say life is stranger than fiction.
There are several reasons why animals use pheromones, like in insects, as well as animals. For example, like raising an alarm, signaling a food trail, often, sexual arousal for sure, like mating purposes, then marking a territory that we often see with dogs, and also warning another animal to just, back off. So these are the reasons why they use pheromones.
But sometimes what we see in movies or read in books is so incredible that it obviously couldn't be possible. Or could it?
The pheromone receptor might be connected to the brain via a different nerve, not the main olfactory nerve. I would not suppose that, because that would sound like just damaging the nose forever. What she's done is quite disastrous, but yeah, she just broke the pathway.
I'm Brian Crump and welcome to Sci-Fi Sci-Fact. This week's intersection of science fiction and science fact is inspired by a movie starring Scarlett Johansson. I'm pretty sure it's part of the Marvel Comics franchise of movies, a spin-off from the Captain America Civil War. It's a movie called Black Widow, and it's all about pheromones.
You're in trouble.
How are you controlling me?
I'm not controlling you, Natasha. But there is a pheromonal lock. Smelling my pheromones that prevents you from committing violence against me.
Here to tell me more is this week's guest, Anindita Sen, who's been studying in the lab in McDiarmid, co-director Professor Justin Hodgkiss. Her specialty, by the way, is biosensors for methamphetamine detection. For some reason, when I see the word or read the word or hear the word pheromone, I immediately think of moths. But I don't know if moths feature in this movie, but Scarlett Johansson does. So tell me, what's going on in Black Widow that's connected to pheromones?
Yeah, so Black Widow, the movie has this sinister villain, General Draco, who is the architect of the Red Room, and who effectively builds a force field around himself by way of pheromones, such that means that if you can smell him, then you can't hurt him. And he has this army of Black Widows who are his weapons, who protect him against all sorts of enemies that he might have. So he manipulates the minds of people.
An army of Black Widows? What are they, spiders or Scarlett Johanssons?
They're just kidnapped children, people, and who have been manipulated into not having any complex decision-making ability. So they're just like, I would say, zombies who just cannot think on their own and would just do what their host, like General Draco, tells them to do.
And us ordinary folk, if we were in this movie, if we could smell these pheromones, which come from General Draco, or which he releases, that he has in his storage tanks or whatever, we don't want to harm him. What happens if we smell the pheromones? Do we become zombies too?
So basically, when you smell the pheromones, you just can't hurt him, even if you want to. So it shows that you go against your own will just because you smell the pheromones. So the pheromones basically control your mind, and you're just left paralyzed. You just can't kill him, even when you want to.
Okay, so what we tend to do in these discussions is find real-life equivalents to this. But, the first thing I'm thinking is that these pheromones, these science-fictional pheromones, seem to be doing the opposite to what real-life pheromones do, which make us want to do things rather than not being able to do something. I mean, a pheromone attracts us to something, doesn't it?
Yeah, so in insects, for example, pheromones are the main mode of communication. For example, like a female moth who produces a pheromone, which is picked up by a male moth, and he would just follow that trail of pheromones and reach the female moth for mating purposes mostly. That's what we know of pheromones. But in humans, it is really not that well researched, and we haven't really found any pheromones in the human world.
We haven't? I thought there were millions of them. I thought that's what the perfume industry is based on, the promise of pheromones.
Not really. I mean, so for pheromones, we need to also have the required organs that are required for detecting pheromones. So humans don't really have that. Like the vomeronasal organ is the organ which is required for detecting pheromones, but it hasn't been found in humans because the vomeronasal organ, or the Jacobson's organ, atrophies before birth. Why we say that the perfume industry is dependent on, based on pheromones, is because we don't know, how we want to define pheromones. For example, if we want to define pheromones as anything which can influence our mood or, elicits some sort of memory in us, then yes, there are body odors like smell of some people when they're sick. It, of course, elicits a particular response. But then again, we cannot establish the universality of these reactions, So how we traditionally define pheromones in insects are not the same in humans.
You mentioned an organ. Was it that atrophies before birth? What? So in the fetus, in the unborn child, it's there, but by the time the child is born, it's out of action already?
Yeah, that's true.
It suggests in our evolutionary history at some point we did have this organ and did use it, but at some point it became redundant?
Yeah, probably, yes. Because humans, if they do respond to pheromones, it's just using their normal olfactory system. It's not using this auxiliary organ, which most other mammals have. Humans don't have it.
Okay, so a lot of other mammals do have it. They don't lose it at birth, but we do.
No. Yes, we do. That's what research says, yes.
Yeah, so that's really strange. Does anyone know why it is that humanity's done away with the organ that allows us to detect pheromones?
Well, I think because pheromones are not that important for us, because we can communicate by just talking, by expressing. And we have so many other ways of communication that pheromones are just not that important. So it has no special use, it has no specific function.
Maybe the fact that our brains had to make way for all that material, all that grey matter that allows us to see things, to see complex shapes, to read, to speak and understand
speech. Because human mind is so complex. Yes, right. Yeah. Because it's the presence of complexity that we've done away with pheromones. And it's maybe because of the lack of complexity in the insect world that they have pheromones. And that's like a major mode of their communication.
But of course, think of the animals such as dogs that can smell things that we can't smell. They can smell when a human is uneasy. They can even smell, some dogs can smell a human when a human might have cancer or some disease that the human doesn't know the human has. So we did give up, we gave up quite a lot in giving up this super sense of smell that other mammals and animals have.
True. I could totally agree. Yes.
Getting back to the way it works in insects, in moths, is it just a sexual attraction thing that pheromones are about? It seems more complex than that.
Yeah, there are several reasons why animals use pheromones, like in insects as well as animals. For example, like raising an alarm, signaling a food trail often, sexual arousal for sure, like mating purposes, then marking a territory that we often see with dogs. And also warning another animal to just, back off. So these are the reasons why they use pheromones.
Is the use of pheromones by mammals as sophisticated as it is with insects?
I'm not too sure about that, but in reptiles it is quite prevalent. But I think the most well-researched and well-defined would be with the first pheromone that was discovered in insect moths, like the silk moths. And the pheromone was known as bombicol. And that is the most well-researched pheromone that we know of.
And is that a sexual attraction pheromone?
Yes, that helps them to procreate. Yes.
Now, getting back to the attempt to find a real-life equivalent to evil Dr. Dracov's pheromones, which control the minds of people who are trying to get him. They can't.
Yeah.
They don't want to harm him anymore. You've already established that pheromones, pheromones wouldn't control a human mind because we don't pick them up anymore.
They can influence. Really, as scientists, we won't want to say that the presence of pheromones cannot be completely ruled out. But if they are present, their effect is not that. It's very subtle. Like their effect is not that enhanced or that strong. So yeah, it's just that they can influence. Maybe they can influence our mind, but not control it. So basically, humans who are known to have like complex brains cannot be manipulated to the extent that they are forced against their will. That's what I think.
The other thing you mentioned earlier, Anindita, is that perhaps it's difficult to find a universal response.
Yeah.
I mean, when I learn a language, the word stop for me as an understander of the language of English, everyone who understands that language knows what that sound means. Stop.
Yeah.
We know it means that.
Yeah.
There's no maybe it might influence me to stop or maybe it won't. It does. We know that, but we can't make a clear link between some chemicals that our nose picks up. I'm assuming it's the nose that picks up pheromones. Funny I should mention nose and pick in the same sentence. It's that, but we can't find some link where everyone has the same response to the smell.
Exactly. Yeah.
What are the?
So it's always different. Yeah.
What are the most compelling examples, even if they're not universal, but still, of smells having a strong influence on humans in one way or another? I mean, people buy flowers for their fragrances. I mean, we spend billions of dollars on perfume, so there must be something that smells still does a lot.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does. It might remind us of a certain memory, or it might make us feel good. But the same odor, which might make me feel good, might not make you feel good. So there is always this difference of reaction, which we observe in humans because of the complexity. So it's never the same. And I think they just don't elicit a universal reaction, and that's just because human brain is complex. And our complexity arises because of a lot of factors like personal experience, memory, interpretation. So humans can think, overthink, imagine, which is not the case with other animals, like especially in insects. It's not the case. So their world is very simple. So pheromones play a very important role, but in our world, they just don't. They're just not that important. Maybe they're out there, but they're just not that important.
I wanted to ask you, Anindita, about your specialty, the stuff you're doing with the lab at the McDiarmid Institute, which is biosensors. So there's a link here, because I mean the nose is a key biosensor, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I would like to consider the human body as a big biosensor. So definitely, it's fascinating.
Any particular thing you're most interested in terms of us sensing stuff, or biosensors sensing stuff?
Yes, like my PhD topic, which is the colorimetric biosensors for the detection of methamphetamine in human saliva. So it has been a really interesting topic to research on, and I had a really special journey with my PhD.
So what were you trying to pick up methamphetamine in human spit? Were you?
Yeah, so I have used the technique of colorimetry, which is colorimetric analysis or colorimetric biosensors is the technique which normally is used to determine the concentration of analytes, in this case methamphetamine, through comparing the color changes that occurs through different samples. So my colorimetric sensor can detect methamphetamine in saliva by way of a color change that we can visually see.
And is there something biological you're putting in the saliva, something alive?
No.
Or is it a chemical that reacts to the methamphetamine in the saliva?
So I have used aptamers. So I've basically developed an aptasensor, a colorimetric aptasensor, which detects methamphetamine. So this aptamer Aptamers are like single-stranded DNA or RNA oligonucleotides, which can bind to a target specifically with high affinity and specificity, and they can form all these unique three-dimensional structures when they bind to the target, and that can be used in a sensor.
RNA and DNA, so they are to some extent. They're living. Are they living organisms, or is that? Am I oversimplifying?
No. So basically, aptamers are synthetically derived chemical compounds, but they are not really extracted from the body or anything.
Okay.
But they are just they can be synthetically made by a procedure.
But they mimic naturally forming RNA
exactly.
and DNA.
Yeah.
And then in reacting with the methamphetamine or some aspect of the methamphetamine in saliva, they change color, and you can tell whether somebody's been doing the pee.
So basically, I have used gold nanoparticles. That's why we see the color change. So these aptamers, when there is no methamphetamine present in the sample, these aptamers just protect the gold nanoparticles against a high salt environment, so that the gold nanoparticles don't aggregate. But when there is methamphetamine present in the sample, these aptamers just leave the gold nanoparticles, and because they change their structure in wanting to bind to the methamphetamine. So once they do that, the gold nanoparticles are left unprotected against the salt in the sample, and they aggregate, and the color changes from red to purple or blue, and we get to know that, okay, there is methamphetamine in the sample.
Could you use this technique to detect other things in saliva?
Yeah, sure. It's absolutely possible. Aptamers have been known to bind to a range of molecules, from single cell to proteins to small molecules like drugs and whatnot. Yeah.
When we sense something with our nose or with our eyes or ears, the brain, the sensing organism organ picks up the chemical, if it's smell or taste, and it then transmits an electrical signal to the brain?
Yeah. So this biological event or the chemical event is actually converted or transduced into an interpretable signal. So in case of the body, I would say the central nervous system is like a transducer, which transduces or converts the chemical signals into some behavioral outputs.
The reason I ask that is because in the movie, Natasha, our hero, who's trying to overcome Dr. Dreykov and his evil Black Widows, or his Black Widow zombies, doesn't she break her nose so that she's immune to the pheromones?
Yes, she does. Because she wanted to sever the nerve which connects the pheromone receptor to the brain. Yes.
But would that actually work, breaking your nose? Just because you break the bone in your nose doesn't mean you can't smell anymore, does it?
So basically, in the movie, I think they might have considered the possibility of having a separate channel for this pheromone communication. The pheromone receptor might be connected to the brain via a different nerve, not the main olfactory nerve. I would not suppose that, because that would sound like just damaging the nose forever. What she's done is quite disastrous, but she just broke the pathway.
Tell me again, what's the name of the organ that other mammals pick up pheromones with, which is redundant in humans?
It's the vomeronasal organ, or the Jacobson's organ.
Jacobson's organ.
Yeah.
How do we know for certain that it's not operating in humans anymore? And where is it? Is it in the nose, or is it somewhere else?
Yeah, it is in the nose. It's separate from the main olfactory nerve. It's like an auxiliary system. So they are a pair of auxiliary organs which are specifically there for detecting pheromones, and they have not been found in humans as per research.
Right.
So
they're in the unborn child, but in a born.
Yeah, they're only in the fetal stage. They're only in the fetus, and
then they disappear.
Yeah, then they just atrophy before birth.
Right, so we are absolutely certain that we're not picking up pheromones the way most other mammals are picking them up.
Yes, no. I mean, humans, if they do respond to pheromone, that's just using their normal olfactory system. It's not using this auxiliary or accessory olfactory sense organ. It's definitely not there. But yeah, if there are pheromones, and we are definitely picking up something, but it's just using our normal sense of smell.
Anindita, is there a lot more we need to learn about how our own sense of smell works?
I think for sure, yes. I mean, why not? There is no end to researching, and we can never rule out the possibility of pheromones and what they can do. So definitely, I think it just needs a lot more research. According to, as per at this stage of human, understanding, our scientific understanding, we don't know of pheromones that work in humans. Like, pheromone action in humans is quite weak.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Sci-Fi Sci-Fact, hosted by me, Brian Crump, produced by Andrew Robertson, and of course, made possible thanks to the incredible knowledge of those brilliant scientists at the MacDiarmid Institute. You can find more episodes of Sci-Fi Sci-Fact on the RNZ podcast page. RNZ's podcasts are also available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify and iHeartRadio, or pretty much wherever you find your podcasts. And make sure to follow us so you don't miss out on any new episodes.